technology. But the story I'm about to tell you could not have happened in any other place. I was teaching in a little city called Atherton, California. If you can see where Atherton is, it's sitting smack dab in the middle of the Silicon Valley. It's the year 2000 and things are happening in the Silicon Valley that are legends in the halls of startup companies today. Secretaries were cashing out their stock options and retiring at age 35 with $5 million. Things were happening in Silicon Valley that had never happened before. Two guys who had a company in a garage were moving their stuff over to Mountain View and calling their company Google. And I was a teacher. I was teaching in a classroom, and it was back to school night. And at back to school night, I had parents out in front of me the way you're sitting in front of me, not as many parents, but it felt like that many, staring at me. And I said to the parents, oh, I just got back. I took these classes over the summer, and I made a website, and I have a website for your kids. And every one of my students in the Silicon Valley had didn't have dial-up anymore. They all had a digital subscriber line, DSL. And so they were ready to come with me on a journey where I could have a website in 2000, and they would actually go look at their homework on that website. But this parent stood in front of me, and they were all looking at me, and I said, wow, I'm going to do these great things. I'm going to use the computer lab all the time. I've done this website, and I can't wait. So think about it. Every kid someday might have a computer in this classroom. Can you imagine that? And the parents who were obviously, into technology because they worked in the Silicon Valley were just sat there and were like, yeah, that would be cool. And then the end of my back-to-school night, it was over, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go give this a try. And about 2 days later, maybe 3, I don't remember exactly how many days later, I get a knock on my classroom door. And nobody knocks on classroom doors. You know this, right? People come in, they're tardy. The principal just comes in and says whatever they want. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle of the lesson or not. So that someone knocked on my door was the first indication to me that something was amiss. So I opened up my door, and there's 2 gentlemen standing there. And they have something behind them that I can't see. So I think, for sure, Publishers Clearinghouse. I'm going to be the next person who wins $1 million. So I'm looking for the balloons. Where's the band? And there's nothing there. So, being a good Oprah fan, I look for Oprah. She's not there either. So right about that time, one of the gentlemen steps around and says, are you Miss Clark? And I was like, yeah. And as soon as he went to go, are you Miss Clark? I saw behind him was a crate of computers. And he handed me a note. And the note said this, Dear Miss Clark, it had more. Here's my contributions. Show the world what technology can do for education. One of those very rich parents sitting in my audience sent me a computer for every child in the year 2000. And I went, yay! What am I going to do now? Like, how am I going to make this happen? And I stopped saying, how am I? I looked to my students, and I said, how are we going to do this? Because I had to let the students take over, and I had to change my mindset because I couldn't do this alone. I could come up with these great lessons, but they were always going to go a different way. So what happened was, and these are not my students, I didn't know I'd be talking to you. I could take pictures of them. I thought that everyone would have devices by now, and you'd be talking to me about all the stuff you're doing. But it's 2015, and we still don't all have devices in our classroom. That's amazing to me. But in that year 2000, each of my students had a device. They all had a one-to-one computer. They didn't get to take it home because it was a big computer. But what I watched happen was this. We were learning history, and when we started to learn about the Salem witch trials, my kids were online looking at stuff, and they came up to me and said, Miss Clark, did you know that there was problems in the waterways back in the 1600s, right around Salem? And they found that the mold that was in the water could have caused hallucinations. And that could have been what people thought. And I went, what? Where'd you find this out? And that's the kind of stuff they were finding out. And then when we learned about the Revolutionary War, they were on some English site finding out what the English people say about the Revolutionary War and comparing that with what our textbook said. And I was watching and going, wow, my kids are becoming these amazing learners. I can't believe what I'm seeing in front of me. And it reminded me of my childhood. I hope you all know this fantastic television show that I sat down Sunday nights at 7 p.m. and watched, and I was a weird child because at a young age I found this guy, who is probably my age now, attractive. I thought he was so cute. Lee Majors, what? Anyway, squirrel, no kidding. So what the $6 million man did is he crashed. He was an astronaut, and they rebuilt him, and they made him stronger because they had the technology to do it. And for those of you in here who are young, and those of you who are my age, this will be nostalgic. You young kids, this is what the show was about. Oh, I didn't even turn it on.
Stronger, faster.
I'm sorry that I didn't have that on for all of it, but like the television show, my students have been amplified by technology. They were stronger, they were faster, and quite frankly, they have become bionic learners because they had access to information. And they were digitally empowered students who could generate more ideas more quickly, and they had access to information, and they do now, today in 2015, never before seen in human history. What do? We hand them a textbook. This looks like my classroom in the 1970s when I was watching the $6 Million Man, but the sad part about this picture, taken in 2012. I walk by classrooms like this every day when I'm visiting schools. But you know this, if you have technology in your classroom, this is what it looks like when you get technology. These are students from New Zealand who just got a grant for Chromebooks in the classroom, and they are doing a Maori happy dance. Because they know, and have you ever seen this? Kids, this is what they look like when they get technology, right? They're like, thank you. Because they know they're going to be connected, and that their classroom's going to be different, and that they're going to be able to have access. And they are super excited. But it's what our, world. It's not just my country, because here I am in Canada. It's what we do with this access that reminds me of this next movie. And I know some of you have seen this, but it's the perfect example.
For the Internet is a historically authentic recreation of a video store, a specialty shop where customers exchange money for the short-term use of videos in an archaic system called renting.
The tour is amazing. It's like stepping into a time machine. It's hard to believe that people live this way.
A historical research team spent 3 years making sure every last detail was accurate, from the signs used to promote the store's merchandise to the costumes worn by the store's employees, historical performers who make history come alive for tour groups twice an hour.
My character is based on an actual Blockbuster employee named Jerome, who worked there from May of 1999 to June 2000. My main responsibilities are to man the cash register and to put the movies from the return slot back onto the shelves.
I am a Blockbuster customer named Kathy. 2 times a week, I travel 6 miles to rent and return videos. We're in the comedy section. What's so poignant about this time is the uncertainty. When you get to the Blockbuster, are they going to have your video? Someone else rents it? Is there going to be a line? Are the alarms going to sound when you walk out the front door? It was very difficult for the people that lived during this period.
Actors say their job is to create a historically authentic experience.
Yes, we have it, but our only copy is currently checked out.
After the organized tour, visitors are allowed to move around the store, exploring the so-called living museum.
It's really amazing that people had to go through so much just to get a movie.
Blockbuster joins a growing number of historical tourism sites, including Buffalo, New York's recreation of Virgin Records Music Store and Iowa City's Borders Bookstore Museum.
So, Blockbuster reminds me of education. Blockbuster didn't make the change it needed to make when it needed to be made. When things started changing, here's what Blockbuster did. They changed. They changed from VHS to DVD. That was their big change. And it kind of reminds me when we go from the overhead projector to the document camera, or the Elmo. Is that the change we want to make? Or smart boards, where they're great for doing some stuff, but they keep instruction right at the front of the room. And for most places, smartboards are very expensive whiteboards. There's a few people who do really use them correctly, but they're few and far between. So I don't want to be Blockbuster. And I imagine that Blockbuster, they sat around a table and someone said to them, hey, have you heard of this little company called Netflix? And they went, oh, don't worry about Netflix. That's people sending stuff to your house. And they didn't take it seriously. And what Netflix did is they completely disrupted Blockbuster. But what is happening with Netflix and why were they able to disrupt? And what is disruption? Well, disruption is this. Disruption is when you displace something by taking a normal marketplace and doing something that's more effective, more worthwhile. Seems like we need to do that in education. How can we make learning more worthwhile when our kids have been rebuilt? They have been rebuilt, but we are still doing some of that old stuff. And it's not just happening with Netflix. Netflix is an old story we all know about. But what about Uber? I know you guys don't have Uber here yet. You're having problems like they're having in Portland, Oregon over Uber. But Uber is one great thing. Uber is a taxi or a car service that comes and picks you up, and you use your app to call it up, and then the app says, oh, it's 3 minutes away, and this person's going to come get you, and this person will be here in 3 minutes, he has a 5-star rating, and here's the car he's going to drive. I don't know if you've ever called a taxi before and they haven't shown up. Yes. It's happened to me a lot of times. And guess what? Taxis could have come up with this plan to show you where things were, when they were coming and who was coming to pick you up. But taxis were too comfortable to make that change. What Uber did was not something great. They just made an app. Taxis could have done that. But taxis